Hello BookTube, this is part 34 of my 2022 library tour, Science Fiction and Fantasy 11. Today I'm starting a new bookcase. Yesterday I finished one of the two bookcases my grandfather made, the fancier sibling of this bookcase here. So this bookcase is the twin of the bookcase I finished on Monday. It's a open shelf unit I picked up from Walmart about 3 years ago. So the one I'm going to start today, I have books on both sides. So it's basically an 8-shelf bookcase. I would like to be able to get the other shelf, like this one, to be able to do the open-ended as well, but I don't have enough room in this room to do so. So it's just a single 4-shelf bookcase for now. But anyway, BookTube, let's get going on to the books. So I begin this part of the tour where I ended yesterday with Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. This is Book 9 of The Wheel of Time, Winter's Heart. And this is Book 11 of The Wheel of Time, Knife of Dreams. Not entirely fond of the artwork. Anyway, the next book is I want to say, I don't think it's a debut, but yeah, it's not, because it says she's a New York Times bestselling author. But this is Fate of the Fallen by Gabriel Kay. This is an epic fantasy. I think it's not quite big enough to be an epic fantasy, but so this book is about a prophesied hero in an upcoming epic conflict who is murdered before the adventure truly begins. And his mantle, his responsibility, is picked up by his best friend, who actually takes his friend's head to show to this conclave of magicians or important people, and then decides to take up the job. I didn't particularly like it. I didn't like this book at all. I picked it up, I think, for my birthday in 2019. Read it in mid-December, and I've basically had hell with fiction ever since. So yeah, not a fan of this book. Next is Runebinder by Alex R. Kaler. This is book 1 in the Runebinder Chronicles. It's a YA fantasy series in which a young man, Runebinder, in a post-apocalyptic Earth, must decide whether he wants to hook up with an older rune hunter or runebinder, or the kind of sort of evil, sexy demon dude who's been trying to seduce him or something. I didn't like it. And I don't particularly like YA. I picked this up because it's a gay fantasy, but it's not terribly well written. And while I'm not opposed to the fate of the world being decided on who exactly the protagonist wants to have a relationship with. But I think in this case it's like only one of the guys was you knew that guy was going to win. The other guy, had no shot. And it's like, just added for drama. But anyway, didn't particularly care for this book either. And I haven't gotten to the sequel, Runebreaker, again by Alex R. Kaler. I think in this case it's not a continuation. These are kind of like standalone sequels. But in this case, I think the main character is a slightly darker character than the first protagonist, and may or may not have, well, I guess the hot demon guy might have a better shot with him than with the first guy. Anyway, I haven't gotten around to it yet either, and I probably won't, but who knows. The next three books are all by a guy, Gabriel Kay, who I think I don't have the best reading relationship with him. I tried his first book, or his first trilogy, the Fianna Tapestry, which is a portal fantasy that's highly influenced by Tolkien. Kay got his start helping Christopher Tolkien work on, I think, the Silmarillion, or do some sort of editorial research work on J.R. Tolkien's papers. And that kind of brought him some prominence, and then he started writing his own fantasies, initially with the Fianna Tapestry being one of the innumerable Tolkien, or fantasies inspired by Tolkien, that cropped up in the 80s and 90s before moving on to his own particular style, which is a very history-driven fantasy that you can kind of sort of play a bit of a parlor game by guessing where his inspirations come from. So anyway, so the first of the three books I have, oh yeah, and I didn't particularly get on with the Fianna Tapestry. I think I bailed within the first few chapters. Anyway, so first of the three I have is The Lions of El Rasan. I want to say this is inspired by Granada and Spain under the Moors, or Islamic Spain. Haven't gotten around to it yet. The next one is A Song for Arbonne. This one is inspired by the Albigensian Crusade, I'm pretty sure. And it's about basically a culture that's really quite pretty, being slowly destroyed at some point. I read the first chapter or so, and I quite like what I've read, but I kind of soft bailed on it because I didn't actually continue on beyond the first chapter. And the third is Tigana. This is, I think, one of his most famous works. It's inspired by Italy, and is about a country that was wiped off the map by an evil sorcerer who is eventually goaded into going to war with another sorcerer, and basically both sorcerers destroying themselves. I didn't particularly like this book at all. I thought it was rather disappointing. Next is Weird, an anthology. This is Weird Tales, edited by Gabriel Kay. I think this anthology includes a number of short stories that appeared originally in Weird Tales magazine, the storied fantasy magazine that began with the pulps in the 20s and has limped along kind of sort of ever since. There are years when it's out of print, it's gone, and then it's resurrected, and then it's dead again. It's a bloody zombie. Which I think currently it's dead. The last time I checked, it's dead, but anyway. Because I think, yeah, because Anne Vandermeer was the editor for a while. and then somebody bought it, fired her, tried to make it great again, and ended up messing it up. Basically, it went on hiatus for like 4 or 5 years, and then it kind of came back. But I think it's kind of gone back into the grave. It's, yeah. Anyway. But I haven't actually really dipped too much into this. I picked this up, I think I saw it on Mark Richardson's channel and wanted a copy, so I picked it up, but I haven't really dipped into it. Next is The Promise of Space and Other Stories by James Patrick Kelly. This is a collection of short stories by James Patrick Kelly. I've read, I think, a few of the stories in here, and I was not impressed, I have to say. And then I have two by Catherine Kerr that I picked up from the Friends of the Library book sold Nook for 25 cents, which is largely why I picked them up. Because I think I've read a short story of hers in Flashing Swords, and I don't think I was too impressed. But first is A Time of Omens, book 2 of the Wasteland cycle. And Camber the Heretic, Volume 3 in the Legends of Camber of Coldy, which is an ex-library copy from the Central Library of the Waco-McLennan County Library. So the next 4 books are a quartet, or tetralogy, by Asuma Osman Khan, the Coruscant Archive. This is book 1, The Bloodprint. This is the story of Arian and her companion, I'm blanking on her name, Sinia. They are companions of Hera, who are waging a 2-women war against the one-eyed preacher, a religious zealot who has conquered most of the city, of the lands around Coruscant. To stop him, Arian and Sinia must find the bloodprint, an original page or an original text of their holy book, that understanding it can give them increased power or legitimacy. So when I first read the book, shortly after it came out, I think I checked it out from the library. I did end up bailing on it. I had a number of problems with it. There's an exaggerated gender issue, but also I thought, since this is very obviously heavily inspired by Islamic culture and Islamic history, and the history of the areas around Iran, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, that I had some issues with it, because obviously the bad guys, the villains, are much more obvious. But then I kind of came back to it about a year later, and I liked it quite a bit more, because I realized that, I mean, the entire setting is influenced by Islamic history and culture, and the bad guys are basically, the crazy, psychotic, evil, religious extremists. But that doesn't mean I didn't still have some problems. Arian is basically approached romantically by every male character in the book, it seems, which kind of started to bug me, because it's like, you can, and it kind of gets repetitive. Although that's, I think, a problem with the series as a whole, is the repetitiveness of it. But I'll talk about that when I get around to it. So basically, at the end of this one, she's found and lost the bloodprint. and must kind of retrack it down in Volume 2, The Black Con, in which she eventually escapes her predicament in the first, from the end of the first book, and basically gets into a new predicament in the second book, where she's got to deal with the Black Khan, a powerful ruler who's trying to kind of figure out his magic. And then in book 3, the Blue Eye, they have to try to find a means of recapturing the blood print again because it's been captured again. And in book 4, the Blade Bone, I'm not entirely sure what happens. I'm assuming there's an eventual final confrontation with the One-Eyed Preacher, and what happens. I haven't gotten to this book yet. I've been meaning to reread the entire tetralogy since last year when the Blade Bone came out, but I ended up having the issues with fiction. What's it? 2020. I think it was last year. I wanted to reread the entire series again, but it kind of slipped past me or away from me. Maybe I'll do that again sometime this year or maybe next year. And the last 3 books are all by Stephen King. Yeah. So first is The Stand. This is his big, epic American fantasy about a super deadly, genetically engineered virus that wipes out 90% of the human population, and the survivors are gradually winnowed into 2 opposing camps. One that is representative of good, the other which is representative of evil, and could use to lose about 500 to 600 pages. But anyway, so I picked this up largely because I'm quite interested in how to do epic fantasy set in the real world, and also epic fantasy in one volume, which this does both, but it's not terribly good. Again, could use to lose about 500 to 600 pages. Next is The Gunslinger, the first book in the Dark Tower series. This is a collection of short stories that forms a novel starring Roland Deschain, who is a magical gunslinger from a very weird world. I first read the first story, The Gunslinger, in an anthology that we'll see in, I think, about 2 weeks. And I quite liked it. And I wanted to read the rest of the collection. So I eventually, I don't know if I checked out a copy of this from the library or if I bought this and read it from here, but I've read the whole collection and they're quite good. I think Stephen King's maybe a stronger-ish, as strong as Stephen King can be, short story writer than he is a novelist. But I rather like this. And so I kind of wanted to pick up his Dark Tower series, and I've got a few, though not many, and so I have The Wastelands, which is the 3rd book, so I need to actually reorganize these. Oops. Can't tell you much because I haven't actually gotten around to reading it yet. So that was part 34 and Science Fiction and Fantasy 11 of my 2022 library tour. I will be back later this evening with weekly reads, and then I will be continuing on with the 2022 library tour next week. There are exactly 2 weeks left. Not this coming week, but the next Friday after. will conclude science fiction and fantasy and the tour in general, although I will be back on that following Monday to do a bit of a wrap up and talk about my experiences of doing this tour, what I've learned, and how badly I need to start culling, particularly science fiction and fantasy. I either need to start reading these or getting rid of them. But anyway, BookTube, I will see you later. So until then, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.